Hello there, YouTube friends. I'm back this week with a wonderful birthday book haul. Yesterday was my birthday and I was given a few books as presents, and I also went out and bought a few books at some of my favorite places to buy books in Washington, D.C., which is called Second Story Books. There's a location in DuPont Circle, and there's a huge warehouse out in Rockville, Maryland, with a ton of books that are all half price. They're really amazing. Great bookstores. If you're in the D.C. area, I highly recommend going. So I just thought I would go through some of my new acquisitions and let you know what I'm going to be reading over the next few weeks, months, and maybe years. First up, we have The Prodigal Tongue, The Love-Hate Relationship Between American and British English by Lynn Murphy. This was a gift to me from my sister for my birthday, and it's interesting to me on a couple of levels. First of all, I love language. I'm fascinated by linguistics and the differences between languages and the way that people speak and dialects and all those things. So it's interesting to me on that level. I'm also a bit of an Anglophile, and I love all things English, so hearing about British English versus American English is fascinating. I've already started it. It's really enjoyable. Lots of interesting anecdotes about etymologies, word histories, where things come from. And then there's this element of snobbery that the Brits have against American English, where they think that their language is intrinsically better and that Americans are ruining the language, destroying the language, which I don't think is at all true. And while I do love a crisp British accent and the way it makes language sound, I like a lot of Britishisms, I like a lot of British spellings. I don't think Americans are ruining the language at all. I am an American myself, as I'm sure you can tell. And I have become increasingly a subjectivist when it comes to language in my later years. And I think that the more ways you have to express something, the more variety you have, the better it is. There's no one correct way to speak. You can express yourself in a variety of different ways, and it's beautiful and it's diverse, and I love that. So being able to defend my mother tongue, American English, is really nice, and also appreciating some of the beauties of British English. Really interesting book. I can't wait to finish it. Next up is The Lost Art of Reading Nature's Signs by Tristan Gooley. This was also a gift from my sister. I am the first to admit that I'm not an outdoorsman. I am an indoor kid. I don't do a lot of outdoor stuff, but I read a book a few years ago called Finding Your Way Without Map or Compass, and it was fascinating to me. I got a lot out of it. I learned a lot about orienteering because I walk a lot. I spend a lot of time walking around the city. Sometimes I'll go out and do hiking. Sometimes I'll walk down by the river in DC. And being able to orient and know which way is north, south, east, and west is really useful, and it's helped me find my way a lot, even in a city where there's not a lot of natural signs. It's been great. So I am excited about this one. I do like to go for long walks, and I like to navigate just by orienteering, knowing where I am by where the sun and the moon are, knowing where I am by the landmarks, the moss on the side of trees, the way that trees lean towards the sun. All those things are interesting to me. So I'm looking forward to reading this and learning more, and maybe I'll work on being a better outdoorsman and being able to better survive in that wilderness without a lot of modern conveniences like compasses and things like that. So I think that'll be a lot of fun, and I'm really appreciative of that gift as well. Okay, now we're into the books that I bought at Second Story Books. First up is a Library of America edition, one of the older ones. They don't have the black dust jacket. They instead have this kind of off-white slip cover. This is James Fenimore Cooper's Sea Tales. I actually don't know anything about this book or this author. I've seen it crop up on Library of America lists before, and I'm a big fan of the Library of America. And I like sea stories. I like nautical tales. I like seafaring adventures. And I think it's very New England-y from what I understand, which I like New England a lot. So I'm expecting to enjoy these stories and get a lot out of them. But I really don't know anything about it. I think there's only 2 real stories in this book. I was expecting a book of short stories, but they seem to be 2 kind of novels, novel-length stories anyway. But I'm interested in it, and I can add this to my shelf of Library of America books and expand my knowledge of the American canon. So I'm looking forward to reading that a lot. Okay, next up, I have a little bit of a heavier read. This is Karl Popper's The Open Society and Its Enemies, Volume 1 and 2. I got the really good deal on this. This is Dover. No, it's not Dover. It looks like Dover. But this is a nice edition of this. And the first volume is about Plato, and I'm not a big fan of Plato, so I will enjoy that. And the second volume is about Marx and Hegel, and I'm not a big fan of Marx and Hegel, so I will enjoy that. I am a fan of the Open Society. I am a fan of freedom of expression. I'm a fan of liberty in general, and I'm very concerned by people who are trying to shut down those methods of free expression and employ a more authoritarian or even totalitarian worldview on things. So Karl Popper is, from what I understand, a great defender of those institutions, and I've never read it. It's always been on my kind of to-read list for many years. Found a good edition for a low price at a used bookstore, and I'm very excited to read those. Next up, I have The History of Spiritualism, Volume 1 and 2 by Arthur Conan Doyle. Most people will know Arthur Conan Doyle as the author of the Sherlock Holmes stories, of course. Very famous for that, but he was also super into spiritualism and fairies and ghosts and the occult and all kinds of things like that. Really into all that stuff, and a fascinating character in history. I read a really interesting book on spiritualism a couple years ago called Radical Spirits by Anne Broad, and that is kind of a history of the feminist leanings of the spiritualist movement in the 19th century in America, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know much about that. I only knew very little about the spiritualist movement, just kind of what you see in horror movies, or what you've heard about from people like Houdini and Anton Mesmer and those kind of guys. But I found it a fascinating read. It's a lot more in-depth and a lot more political than I thought it was. So I like Arthur Conan Doyle's fiction, and I like the spiritualist movement, and I like those type of topics. So I saw this 2-volume edition on sale for a good price, and I thought that's going to be interesting. I'm going to enjoy that. So I'm very fascinated to see what Arthur Conan Doyle's take on the spiritualist movement is. I assume he'll be a little bit on the credulous side, but that will be entertaining in itself, I'm quite sure. And it's 2 volumes, so there should be a lot of meat there. Next up, I have The Serpent Power, The Secrets of Tantric and Shaktic Yoga by Arthur Avalon. This is a Dover Publications edition. And this is a book I've had on my to-read list for a long time. Dover publishes a lot of really interesting classics of occultism, spirituality, Eastern religion, things like that. And I've got a lot of their works, but I don't have this one. And it's one I've seen in their catalog for a long time and thought that would be interesting. I've started getting more into the Eastern side of spirituality and some of the meditation and the yoga type things. So I'm interested in this, and it should be a lot of fun. It's an old book. It's probably one of the early introductions to the West to these type of concepts. But I wanted to read it for a long time, so I'm excited. I got it for only $4 used. You can't beat that, $4. The cover price here says $5, so I got a good deal. Finally, I got this really nice, beautiful hardcover of Bulfinch's Mythology. It's published by Avenel, which I have not heard of that publisher before, but apparently they're like one of those Easton Press or Franklin Library. They do really nice editions of books. And so I got this on sale half price for a really good price. And I've read the first section of Bulfinch's Mythology before, which is like the classical mythology about Greek and Roman heroes and gods and things like that. But there's a lot more to it that I haven't read. There's a whole section on the Mabinogion, which is the Welsh national epic. And I've never read that. I've always wanted to because I'm kind of fascinated by Wales and all things Welsh, the Welsh language. So I really want to read the Mabinogion. That's in here. There's a bunch of things about Arthurian legends. There's legends of Charlemagne. So it's a real classic of mythology. I've always been a fan of mythology and folklore. I've read Edith Hamilton's mythology, but I haven't really given Bulfinch the credit that he deserves. I haven't spent enough time with his book. And since it's such a handsome volume, it'll look great on my shelf, and I got it for a great price. So I'm looking forward to learning more about mythology from our friend, Mr. Bulfinch. So there you have it. That's my birthday book haul. Happy birthday to me. I've got a lot of reading to do. I've got a lot of stuff to catch up on, but I'm hoping, and I'm not making any promises, but I've been trying to finish a long series of books for like a year, and I want to do a video on them. I want to do a really in-depth video on them for you, and I'm hoping I can get that done next week. I still have a few hundred pages to go, so I may not make it in time, but my goal is for the next video to be this big, long book series that I've been promising for a long time. So stay tuned for that, and I'll be back next time. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave me a comment about any of these books that I just mentioned. If you've read them or you know anything about them, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time.